I watch Marcus slide the acquisition papers across the mahogany table, his signature already dry on every page. And I realize that 3 years of my life have been nothing but an elaborate con game where I was the only player who didn't know the rules. The boardroom at Henderson and Associates feels like a tomb, all polished wood and suffocating silence. And I can't breathe as I stare at documents that legally transfer my life's work to someone I've never met. Someone Marcus calls our silent partner, with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. Sophia, darling, you look confused, Marcus says, his voice carrying that patronizing tone I once mistook for affection. And beside him sits a woman with platinum blonde hair and cold blue eyes who hasn't stopped smiling since she walked into this room 20 minutes ago. Let me introduce you to Elena Winters, the investor who's going to take our little project to the next level. Our little project. My hands shake as I flip through pages that describe my AI algorithms as basic computational models developed under Chen Winters Technologies. And I want to scream that I spent 2 years in my MIT dorm room creating breakthrough machine learning code that thinks and adapts like a human brain. But Marcus is already explaining to Elena how we developed everything together in his apartment, how we always knew this technology would revolutionize human-computer interaction. Your little app ideas were cute, Sophia, but this is real business now, Marcus continues, and Elena nods approvingly as she signs check after check, 50,000 here, 100,000 there, numbers that represent my family's entire investment in our startup. Money my parents scraped together by mortgaging their restaurant chain because they believed in my dreams. Elena understands technology in ways that, well, let's be honest, you never could. I look at Elena Winters and something cold crawls up my spine because she's staring at me like I'm an interesting specimen under a microscope, not a business partner being betrayed by her fiancé. Miss Joe, I hope you understand this is nothing personal, she says, her voice smooth as silk and twice as deadly. Marcus has explained how you've been supportive during the development process, bringing coffee, organizing files, providing moral support. We'll make sure you receive appropriate compensation for your contributions. Moral support, coffee runs, file organization. I want to laugh, except I think I might throw up instead because Marcus is nodding along as if 3 years of late nights debugging code and breakthrough moments and patent applications were just me playing secretary to his genius. And Elena's legal team is already producing documents that prove I was never a co-founder, never an equal partner, never anything more than Marcus Chen's helpful girlfriend who liked to pretend she understood technology. The intellectual property transfers are all standard procedure, Elena's lawyer explains, sliding more papers toward me with clinical efficiency. Miss Joe's contributions have been properly cataloged and compensated according to her actual involvement in the development process. What actual involvement? I finally find my voice and it comes out strangled and desperate. I wrote every line of code. I developed the core algorithms. I filed the original patents from my dorm room before I even met Marcus. But Elena just smiles that perfect society smile, and Marcus actually laughs, actually throws his head back and laughs like I've told the funniest joke he's ever heard. Sophia, sweetheart, we both know you needed a lot of help with the technical aspects. Remember how confused you were about the neural network architecture? How I had to explain machine learning principles to you? The room spins because he's rewriting history in real time, taking moments when I was teaching him and flipping them into evidence of my incompetence. And Elena's team is nodding like this all makes perfect sense. Like, of course, the MIT computer science graduate with the perfect GPA needed her boyfriend to explain basic programming concepts. Did you really think someone like you could run a real company? Marcus asks, and his voice is gentle now, almost kind, which makes it so much worse. Elena's family has been in business for 5 generations. They understand markets and scaling and international expansion. This technology deserves to be in capable hands. Someone like you. The words hit me like a physical blow because I know exactly what he means. Someone whose family immigrated 2 generations ago. Someone whose parents run a small restaurant chain instead of a banking empire. Someone who got into MIT on scholarship instead of legacy admission. Someone who believed that brilliance and hard work mattered more than bloodline and connections. Elena stands up, smoothing her designer skirt with manicured hands that have never spent 18 hours straight debugging code, and extends one of those hands toward me in a gesture that looks generous, but feels like dismissal. Miss Joe, I hope there are no hard feelings. Marcus speaks very highly of your enthusiasm for the project. Perhaps we can find you a position in our quality assurance department once we get everything properly established. Quality assurance. They want to offer me a job testing my own technology, making sure my algorithms work correctly under someone else's management. And Marcus is beaming like he's done me the favor of a lifetime. I need to think about this, I managed to say. But Elena's lawyer is already packing up documents and Marcus is checking his phone, like this meeting is just another item on his to-do list. Something to handle efficiently before moving on to more important matters. Of course, take all the time you need, Elena says. But her smile suggests that my thinking time is more of a courtesy than a genuine option. Marcus, shall we discuss the IPO timeline over lunch? And I realize that they're leaving, walking out of this boardroom together while I sit here surrounded by the wreckage of everything I built, everything I dreamed, everything I sacrificed for a man who was apparently working against me from the very beginning. Marcus doesn't even look back as they leave, doesn't acknowledge that he's just destroyed the woman who loved him enough to trust him with her life's work. The next 6 months blur together like a nightmare I can't wake up from, each day bringing fresh humiliation as Chen Winters Tech launches my AI technology to international acclaim while I watch from the sidelines like a spurned ex-girlfriend who can't accept that the relationship is over. Marcus appears on magazine covers and tech conference stages, explaining his breakthrough in machine learning architecture to audiences who hang on every word while Elena stands beside him at red carpet events. Her hand on his arm, both of them glowing with the success they built on my foundation. The engagement party is held at the Ritz-Carlton Ballroom, 300 guests in evening wear sipping champagne and celebrating the union of two visionary entrepreneurs who are reshaping the future of technology, and I attend because Marcus personally invited me, told me it would mean so much to have his dear friend there to witness his happiness. I wear a custom Valentino gown that cost $50,000, money I don't have but spent anyway because I need to look like I belong in this room full of old money and new power. Need to prove to myself that I can still hold my head high even as my world crumbles around me. Ladies and gentlemen, Marcus's voice cuts through the cocktail chatter as he takes the microphone. Elena radiant beside him in a dress that probably costs more than my parents' monthly mortgage payment. Elena and I want to thank you all for celebrating with us tonight. As many of you know, building Chen Winters Tech has been an incredible journey, and finding someone who shares my vision for the future has made every challenge worthwhile. He talks about shared dreams and complementary strengths, about how Elena's business acumen perfectly balances his technical innovation, about the empire they're building together, and I stand at the back of the ballroom feeling like a ghost haunting my own funeral. When he mentions the early supporters who helped make this possible, his eyes find mine across the crowd for just a moment, and I see something there that might be pity or might be satisfaction, but definitely isn't love and probably never was. My grandmother has a heart attack 3 days later. She collapses in her garden while tending the roses she planted when my grandfather bought their house 60 years ago. And I find her lying among the flowers when I come to visit, her face gray and her breathing shallow. At the hospital, the doctors explain about stress-induced cardiac events and pre-existing conditions, but I know the truth. She's dying of shame, dying from watching her granddaughter become a cautionary tale whispered about in the social circles where she once held her head high. The Joe girl lost everything to that Chen boy, I hear them say at the hospital, other families from our community speaking in Mandarin like I can't understand them. Gave him her technology and her heart, and he took both to that white girl's family. Her parents had to sell 2 restaurants already. My parents don't say much when they visit grandmother's bedside, but I see the weight they're carrying in the way my father's shoulders slump, and my mother can't meet my eyes. The restaurant chain they spent 30 years building is dissolving piece by piece, sold off to pay debts incurred from their investment in my startup, their faith in my dreams becoming the instrument of their financial destruction. Grandmother dies on a Tuesday morning while I'm in the hallway getting coffee, and I miss her last breath because I'm staring at a news alert on my phone about Chen Winters Tech's latest partnership with Samsung, another milestone built on my stolen technology while my family pays the price for trusting me. The funeral is small and quiet, nothing like the elaborate celebrations my family once hosted, and Marcus sends flowers with a card that reads, "Sorry for your loss. Fondly, Marcus and Elena." I hold that card in my hands and want to burn it, want to scream, want to demand that the universe explain how someone can destroy everything you love and then send sympathy flowers like they're a distant acquaintance expressing polite condolences. 6 months after grandmother's funeral, I'm alone in a hospital room diagnosed with stress induced heart failure, watching my heart monitor beep irregularly while a news report plays on the mounted television about Chen Winters Tech's IPO announcement. Marcus and Elena appear on screen together, him in a perfect charcoal suit and her in cream silk, both of them glowing with health and success as they ring the opening bell at NASDAQ. This technology represents the future of human-computer interaction, Marcus tells the reporter, and I want to laugh because those are my words. The exact phrase I used when I first explained my vision to him in my MIT dorm room 3 years ago. Elena and I are excited to share this breakthrough with the world. The stock price jumps 40% on the first day. I close my eyes as the monitor beeps faster, my damaged heart struggling to keep up with the rage and grief flooding my system. And I think about how Marcus used to trace patterns on my back when we lay together in my narrow dorm bed, how he'd whisper about the future we'd build together, how he made me believe that love and partnership were the same thing. The last thing I see before unconsciousness takes me is Elena's face on the television screen, beautiful and triumphant and completely untouchable. The woman who orchestrated my destruction with the same cold precision she probably uses to plan charity galas. Then I closed my eyes in that sterile hospital room, listening to Marcus and Elena announce their victory on the evening news. And when I opened them again, I was 22 years old, sitting in my MIT dorm room, staring at the business plan I'd written for Marcus 3 years ago. The document in my hands is titled Partnership Proposal, Chenzhou Technologies. 40 pages of detailed projections and technical specifications that I spent 2 weeks perfecting, and I know exactly what day this is because the timestamp on my laptop shows March 15th, 2021, 3:47 p.m. In exactly 1 hour and 13 minutes, Marcus will knock on my door with 2 cups of coffee and that charming smile that fooled me for 3 years, and he'll sit on my bed while I excitedly explain my breakthrough in adaptive AI architecture, never suspecting that I already know how this story ends. But not this time. I look around my dorm room and everything is exactly as I remember it. The same MIT textbooks stacked on my desk, the same prototype circuits scattered across my workbench, the same naive enthusiasm burning in my chest like a flame I haven't learned to protect yet. Except I have learned, haven't I? I lived through 3 years of betrayal and watched my family lose everything while Marcus and Elena built an empire on my stolen dreams, and now somehow I'm back at the beginning with all that knowledge intact. My hands shake as I tear the business plan in half, then into quarters, then into pieces too small to ever reassemble, and I feel something shift inside my chest like a door slamming shut on the trusting girl who believed that brilliance and hard work were enough to protect the people she loved. I won't be the naive fool who hands over her life's work to a Phoenix man again. Won't be the stepping stone Marcus uses to climb into Elena's world of generational wealth and established power. I pick up my phone and dial a number I haven't called in months. Not since high school graduation when we promised to keep in touch, but never did because we were moving in different directions. Him to Harvard Business School and me to MIT. Him to follow in his family's venture capital footsteps, and me to chase my dreams of technological revolution. David. My voice sounds strange to my own ears, steadier than I remember being at 22. It's Sophia Joe. I have a business proposition that's going to change everything. David Park was always the quiet boy next door, 2 years older and infinitely more patient than I ever deserved. The one who helped me with calculus homework in high school and never mentioned that he was already taking advanced mathematics at Harvard as a dual enrollment student. His family runs Park Ventures, one of the most successful tech investment firms on the East Coast. But David never flaunted his connections the way Marcus will when he walks through my door in 57 minutes. Sophia! This is unexpected. David's voice is warm with genuine pleasure. And I remember suddenly how he used to look at me during high school, like I was something precious he was afraid to touch. How's MIT treating you? I've developed something revolutionary, I say, cutting through pleasantries because I don't have time for the slow dance of reconnection. AI that doesn't just process information but actually adapts its thinking patterns based on user interaction. It learns like a human brain, David. It grows. The silence on the other end stretches long enough that I wonder if the connection dropped. But then David speaks and his voice has changed, become focused in the way I remember from when he'd work through complex problems, methodical and thorough. Can you demonstrate it? I can do better than that. I can show you the complete architecture and let you test it yourself. But David? I pause, choosing my words carefully because this conversation will determine everything that follows. I need this kept completely confidential, no sharing with partners, no casual mentions to colleagues. This stays between us until I decide otherwise. Of course, he says immediately. And I remember this about David too. He never needed explanations for boundaries, never pushed when I asked for space or privacy. When can we meet? Tonight. Can you drive up to Cambridge? I'll be there in 2 hours. I hang up and immediately begin securing my research, encrypting files and copying everything to multiple secure drives, because I know Marcus will try to access my work eventually. We'll assume that proximity and charm give him the right to my innovations. My fingers fly across the keyboard as I implement security measures I never thought I'd need 3 years ago. Back when I believed that love meant shared everything and trust was something you gave freely to people who claimed to care about your dreams. 53 minutes now. I shower and change into professional attire instead of the casual clothes I would have worn in my previous timeline, choosing a black blazer and tailored pants that make me look older, more serious, less like the eager student who can be impressed by confidence and grand promises. When I look in my dorm room mirror, I see traces of the woman I became after Marcus destroyed me. Harder around the eyes, more careful with my expressions, less willing to reveal the soft places where betrayal leaves its deepest marks. Marcus knocks at exactly 5 p.m., punctual as always, and I can hear him shuffling outside my door, probably balancing 2 coffee cups and wearing that self-deprecating smile he uses to disarm people before he asks for favors. In my previous timeline, I would have rushed to open the door, excited to share my breakthrough with someone I thought understood my passion for innovation. Instead, I wait. I let him knock twice more before opening the door, and the look of surprise that crosses his face when he sees me is almost worth the years of pain he'll never know he caused. He's exactly as I remember him. Tall and lean, with carefully styled black hair and brown eyes that seem warm until you learn to recognize the calculation behind them. Wearing a casual button-down shirt and dark jeans that suggest approachable competence without threatening anyone's authority. Sophia, you look... He pauses, clearly searching for the right word as he takes in my professional appearance and carefully neutral expression. Different. Professional. I brought your favorite coffee. He extends one of the cups toward me, and I notice he's chosen my usual order from the campus coffee shop. Vanilla latte with extra foam. The kind of small detail that once made me think he was paying attention because he cared, not because he was cataloging information for future manipulation. Thank you, but I've switched to black coffee, I say, not moving to take the cup. I find it helps me focus better. Marcus's smile falters slightly, but he recovers quickly, adjusting his approach the way I've seen him do 100 times when his initial charm doesn't land as expected. Of course, you're always evolving. That's what I admire about you, Sophia. You never stay in one place long enough to get comfortable. In my previous timeline, I would have blushed at the compliment and invited him in immediately, eager to show off my latest breakthrough to someone whose opinion mattered to me. Now I recognize the technique. Start with observation, add flattery, create intimacy through apparent understanding. It's the same approach Elena will use when she pretends to be interested in my journey as a female entrepreneur while stealing my intellectual property. What brings you by, Marcus? I ask, not stepping back from the doorway. He shifts his weight, clearly thrown by my lack of enthusiasm, and I can see him recalibrating his strategy in real time. Well, we talked last week about potentially collaborating on something, and I've been thinking about your AI research. You seemed excited about the commercial applications. Last week in this timeline, but 3 years of betrayal in my memory. I remember that conversation now. How I babbled enthusiastically about my breakthrough while Marcus nodded and asked probing questions about my technical approach. Questions I thought demonstrated his intellectual curiosity, but now understand were intelligence gathering for Elena's benefit. I've decided to focus on independent research for now, I tell him, keeping my voice level and professional. I think collaboration might compromise the purity of the work. The words hit him like a physical blow, and for a moment his mask slips enough that I can see genuine confusion underneath. This isn't going according to his script, and Marcus has always struggled when situations don't unfold exactly as he's planned them. Independent research is great, Sophia, but you have to think about scaling and market penetration and all the business aspects you don't really enjoy dealing with, he says. And there it is, the subtle dismissal disguised as helpful concern. The implication that I'm brilliant enough to create revolutionary technology, but not sophisticated enough to understand what to do with it. I think I'm more business-minded than you might expect, I reply, and something in my tone makes him step back slightly, creates distance where he was expecting intimacy. Of course you are, I didn't mean to suggest otherwise, he says quickly, but the damage is done because now I can see him struggling to regain control of a conversation that was supposed to be easy manipulation of a naive student. It's just that some aspects of commercialization require specific expertise, connections in the industry, relationships with investors who understand the tech space. He's building up to his real pitch now, the same one Elena prepared him to deliver 3 years ago. The suggestion that my technology needs his connections, that innovation without proper business guidance is worthless, that I should be grateful for the opportunity to partner with someone who understands markets and scaling and all the complex realities I'm supposedly too academic to grasp. Marcus, I interrupt, and he stops mid-sentence, clearly surprised by my directness. I appreciate your interest in my work, but I'm not looking for a business partner right now. Maybe we should keep our relationship purely social from now on. The silence stretches between us like a chasm, and I watch Marcus process this rejection with the same shock he might feel if his morning coffee suddenly tasted like poison. He's not used to being dismissed, especially not by someone he's categorized as intellectually inferior and emotionally dependent on male validation. Purely social, he repeats slowly, as if testing the words for hidden meaning. Sophia, I hope I haven't done something to upset you. If I've been too forward about the business stuff, we can definitely slow down and just focus on being friends. Friends. The word sounds hollow coming from his mouth because we both know he's never seen me as a friend. I was either a useful resource to be cultivated or a romantic conquest to be managed, but never an equal deserving of genuine friendship. In my previous timeline, his strategic retreat into platonic territory would have panicked me, made me desperate to prove my worth as both a woman and a potential partner. Now it just confirms everything I already know about his character. That sounds perfect, I say with a smile that doesn't reach my eyes. I should get back to my research now. Thanks for stopping by, Marcus. I close the door before he can respond, before he can deploy whatever recovery strategy he's formulating, and I lean against the wood, listening to his footsteps retreat down the hallway. For the first time in 3 years, or 3 years ago, depending on how you count time when you've lived through your own destruction and somehow been given a second chance, I feel something like peace. David arrives at 7:30 with a laptop bag and the kind of focused energy I remember from high school when he'd work through calculus problems that made other students cry. He's taller than I remembered, broader through the shoulders, and his dark hair is shorter now, more professional. But his eyes are the same warm brown that used to watch me struggle through advanced mathematics with infinite patience. You look good, Sophia, he says as I let him into my dorm room, and unlike Marcus's calculated compliments, David's observation feels genuine, undemanding. MIT agrees with you. I've learned a lot, I reply, which is perhaps the understatement of this lifetime or the previous one. Thank you for coming so quickly. I know you're busy. Never too busy for you, he says simply, and something in my chest tightens, because I remember now how David used to say things like that in high school. Casual declarations of availability that I took for granted because I was 17 and assumed everyone would always be willing to rearrange their lives for my convenience. I boot up my laptop and begin walking him through my AI architecture, explaining the breakthrough in adaptive learning that makes my algorithms different from every other machine learning system currently in development. David asks intelligent questions without trying to prove how much he knows, listens without interrupting, takes notes by hand in the careful script I remember from when he'd helped me with homework. This isn't just evolutionary, Sophia, he says after I finish my demonstration. This is revolutionary. You've created artificial intelligence that actually learns like human intelligence, instead of just processing data faster. Can your firm handle this kind of investment? I ask directly because I don't have time for the gradual courtship dance that venture capital relationships usually require. We can handle whatever you need, David replies without hesitation. But first, I need to understand what you're really asking me. This is MIT level research that could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Why are you bringing it to Park Ventures instead of pursuing traditional academic channels or one of the big Silicon Valley firms? I look at David Park, this quiet boy who grew into a thoughtful man, this childhood friend who drove 2 hours on a Tuesday night because I called and asked him to. And I realize that I'm about to test whether the universe really has given me a second chance or just another opportunity to make different mistakes. Because I trust you, I tell him. And the words are simpler and more complicated than anything I said to Marcus in 3 years of believing I was in love. And because I think we could build something extraordinary together. David studies my face for a long moment, and I can see him weighing factors I can only guess at. The potential return on investment, the risks of backing unproven technology, the complications of mixing business with personal history. When he speaks, his voice is steady and sure. $2 million initial investment for 20% equity, he says. Park Ventures provides business development support, legal protection, and connections for scaling. You maintain majority ownership and final decision authority on all technical matters. It's a better offer than anything Marcus ever presented. Better than the partnership Elena will eventually offer before she steals everything. And I know David is probably lowballing his own firm's take because he believes in my work more than he believes in maximizing immediate profit. Deal, I say, and we shake hands like business partners instead of hugging like old friends. And somehow that formality feels more intimate than any physical contact I shared with Marcus in 3 years of thinking we were building something together. Over the next 3 months, I watch my second life unfold with the strange double vision of someone who knows how the story is supposed to end, but is determined to write a different ending. David introduces me to patent attorneys who file ironclad protections for my technology before anyone else can even understand what I've created. And I hire a team of brilliant programmers by offering them equity stakes and genuine collaboration instead of the hierarchical exploitation that passes for leadership in most tech startups. Joe Innovations launches at TechCrunch Disrupt on a Tuesday morning in June, and I stand on stage in front of 2,000 industry professionals explaining my breakthrough in adaptive artificial intelligence to an audience that understands exactly how revolutionary this technology really is. The demonstration goes flawlessly, my AI learning new languages in real time, adapting its communication style to match different users, solving complex problems by thinking through solutions the way humans do instead of just processing massive datasets. The standing ovation lasts for 4 minutes. Backstage, reporters line up for interviews, and venture capitalists slip me their cards with handwritten notes about partnership opportunities, and I field questions about my background and my vision for the future of human-computer interaction with the confidence of someone who's already lived through the alternative timeline where I let other people speak for my achievements. Miss Joe, how does it feel to be the youngest female tech CEO to launch at Disrupt? Asks a journalist from TechCrunch, and I smile for the cameras knowing that Marcus and Elena are somewhere in this audience watching me claim the recognition that should have been mine 3 years ago. It feels like the beginning, I tell her. I see Marcus during the networking reception, standing near the back of the room with Elena Winters at his side, both of them trying to look casual while obviously discussing my presentation. Elena is exactly as I remember her. Platinum blonde hair styled to perfection, designer dress that probably costs more than most people's monthly salary, the kind of understated elegance that comes from generational wealth and careful breeding. She's beautiful in the way that powerful women learn to be beautiful, not for personal pleasure, but as another tool for getting what they want. Marcus approaches me after I finish an interview with Forbes, weaving through the crowd with Elena trailing behind him like a hunting partner waiting for the right moment to strike. Sophia, congratulations, he says, extending his hand for a handshake that feels awkward and formal after 3 years of thinking we were intimate partners. That was an incredible presentation, really groundbreaking work. Thank you, Marcus, I reply with professional politeness, noting how his smile doesn't quite reach his eyes and how Elena is studying me with the same calculating expression I remember from the boardroom where they destroyed my first life. I'd like you to meet Elena Winters, Marcus continues, and Elena steps forward with her perfect society smile and manicured hand extended. Elena, this is Sophia Joe, the brilliant developer I told you about. The brilliant developer he told her about while they planned to steal my technology and destroy my family. But I just shake Elena's hand and match her smile with one equally polished and equally empty. Miss Joe, what an impressive demonstration, Elena says, and her voice has that cultured quality that comes from expensive education and careful training in how to sound interested in other people's achievements. I'd love to learn more about your journey as a female entrepreneur in the tech space. Female entrepreneur, not brilliant innovator or revolutionary developer, but female entrepreneur, as if my gender is the most noteworthy thing about creating artificial intelligence that thinks like human intelligence. It's the same diminishing technique she used in my previous timeline, reducing my technical achievements to diversity narrative talking points. I prefer to think of myself as an entrepreneur who happens to be female. I reply smoothly. The technology speaks for itself regardless of who created it. Elena's smile tightens almost imperceptibly, and I can see her recalibrating her approach the way I've watched her do in boardrooms where she needs to establish dominance without appearing aggressive. Of course, the technology is remarkable. I represent some investors who might be interested in partnering with Joe Innovations as you scale internationally. Partnership. The same word Marcus used when he was preparing to steal everything I'd built, the same concept Elena will use to justify corporate espionage disguised as due diligence. I appreciate the interest, but we're very selective about our partnerships, I tell her with professional courtesy that contains no warmth. Joe Innovations prefers to work with investors who understand our long-term vision rather than those focused on short-term returns. It's a polite dismissal wrapped in business language, and both Marcus and Elena recognize it immediately. Marcus looks genuinely confused by my lack of enthusiasm for Elena's interest, while Elena's mask slips just enough that I can see a flash of irritation at being rejected by someone she considers intellectually and socially inferior. Well, if you change your mind, please don't hesitate to reach out, Elena says, producing a business card from her designer clutch with practiced efficiency. I think you'll find that Winter Capital has resources that could be very beneficial for a company like yours. A company like mine. Code for a startup founded by someone without generational connections, someone who needs their established networks and old money credibility to succeed in markets dominated by inherited privilege. I'll keep that in mind, I say, accepting the card because refusing it would be unnecessarily rude. And Elena nods with the kind of smile that suggests she considers this conversation a temporary setback rather than a permanent rejection. After they leave, I find David at the bar nursing a whiskey and watching the crowd with the same quiet observation skills that made him such a good study partner in high school. Old friends? He asks, nodding toward where Marcus and Elena are now talking intently near the exit. Marcus was someone I knew at MIT, I reply carefully. Elena represents Winter Capital. They were interested in partnership opportunities. Were interested, David repeats, catching my use of past tense. I take it you weren't impressed by their pitch. I don't think their values align with our company culture, I tell him, which is perhaps the most diplomatic way to describe people who built their success on systematic betrayal and intellectual property theft. David nods like this makes perfect sense to him, and I remember this about him too. How he never pushed for details when I indicated a topic was closed. How he trusted my judgment even when he didn't understand all the factors involved in my decisions. Good instincts, he says simply. Some partnerships cost more than they're worth. Over the following months, I watch Marcus and Elena try to build their own tech startup using the same strategy they employed in my previous timeline, except now they're missing the crucial component that made their plan work, my stolen technology. Without my algorithms, they have nothing innovative to offer potential investors, nothing that distinguishes their company from dozens of other generic AI development firms trying to capitalize on machine learning trends. I know they're desperate when Marcus tries to recruit away my lead programmer with an offer that's 40% higher than Joe Innovations can match. But Sarah Chen, no relation to Marcus despite the shared surname, turns him down because she has equity in my company and believes in our mission of democratizing artificial intelligence. He seemed nice enough, Sarah tells me after Marcus's awkward recruitment pitch at a Cambridge coffee shop. But when I asked about their technical architecture, he couldn't give me any specifics, just kept talking about revolutionary breakthroughs and paradigm shifts without explaining what they've actually built. Because they haven't built anything except a business plan based on technology they no longer have access to, I think, but don't say aloud. Elena's family starts asking uncomfortable questions about her tech investments after 6 months of minimal returns and industry rumors about Chen Winter's tech's lack of demonstrable innovation. I know this because Park Ventures has connections throughout the Boston investment community, and David occasionally shares intelligence about competitors and market conditions during our weekly strategy meetings. Winter Capital is pulling back from tech sector investments, David mentions casually while we review Joe Innovation's quarterly projections. Apparently, Elena Winter's recent ventures haven't met family expectations. I nod like this is interesting but not particularly relevant to our business, even though internally I'm celebrating the first sign that Elena's systematic destruction of my previous life is finally generating consequences for her instead of just her victims. The real satisfaction comes 8 months after TechCrunch disrupt, when Chen Winter's tech quietly folds after burning through their initial funding without producing any viable products. The announcement is buried in the business section of the Boston Globe, just 2 paragraphs about a promising startup that couldn't scale their technology to market demands, but I read those paragraphs 3 times and feel something settle in my chest that might be justice or might just be relief. Marcus tries one last desperate gambit 2 weeks later, showing up at Joe Innovation's headquarters with what he calls a proposal for strategic collaboration, but which I recognize as a job interview disguised as a business meeting. Our receptionist directs him to the conference room where I keep him waiting for exactly 30 minutes. Not long enough to be genuinely rude, but long enough to establish that his time is no longer automatically valuable to me. Sophia, thank you for seeing me, he says when I finally enter the conference room, and I notice how his designer clothes can't quite disguise the stress weight he's gained or the slight tremor in his hands that suggests he's not sleeping well. I know we haven't talked much since the TechCrunch event, but I've been following Joe Innovation's success, and I'm incredibly impressed by what you've built. What I've built, not what we built together or what our collaboration achieved, but what I accomplished independently while he was busy failing to steal my work. It's a small acknowledgement, but significant coming from someone who spent 3 years convincing me that my contributions were secondary to his vision and leadership. The company has exceeded our projections. I agree neutrally, settling into the chair across from him with the kind of professional distance I use for meetings with vendors or service providers. I was hoping we might discuss opportunities for me to contribute to that success.